Welcome to another episode of the Overnight Success. I'm one of your hosts, Christy Lime, and I'm excited to bring in Jen McKee today. She is the founder of Key Heart Marketing, a social media agency dedicated to helping trades businesses such as plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and more. She stands out and helps them grow online. Jen didn't become an overnight success by chance. Her journey is a powerful mix of grit, big vision, and consistency. From starting small to scaling into one of the fastest growing agencies in the trades, Jen has proven how showing up every single day builds momentum over time. Along the way, she's been recognized with national awards, spoken on industry stages, and built a reputation for her bold, sparkly approach to marketing and leadership. She's here to share the real behind the scenes of building and thriving business, what it takes to push through the setbacks, and why visibility is one of the most underrated drivers of success. And I'm so excited because I've really seen this in the last couple of years of the sparkly success is so fun too, because I think that you really come through in your own branding of being purple and sparkly and also niching in and also finding your own lane. And so I'm so excited to dive in. I know we've had some offline conversations in the past, but Jen, I want to turn it to you and would love for you to introduce yourself. Thank you for that incredible bio, but we're going to definitely dive deeper into some of these things.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I am Jen McKee, like you said. I don't really know if there was anything missed on there, but I own Key Heart Marketing, and we specialize in social media for home service companies.
And how did you get into home services specifically?
Diving into the good stuff. It's totally by accident. And when you talk to people in the home services, I feel like there's a couple ways that you get in. Either you're like born into it, you're married into it, or you just accidentally fell into it and then never left. So I had a social media side hustle basically, and I was helping business owners with their social, which I had since 2018. And in 2021, January of 2021, I had a friend who was taking a full-time position. She had been a freelancer and she was offloading her clients, and she wanted to introduce me to this plumber that she knew. When I talked to the plumber, she told me that she wanted to be on all the platforms. At the time, I had been testing TikTok for myself and was really wanting to put businesses on there. It wasn't a big place for businesses at the time. So when I talked to this plumber, I was like, oh, like she was like, I want to be on TikTok. And I was like, that's perfect because I've actually never put anybody on TikTok, but I want to. This is something I want to test. So she knew she was the first person to test it with. We had a lot of success. Our account grew really quickly. We had a lot of videos do really well. And she likes to say that we were the first residential home service company to ever use TikTok for a business place, maybe or maybe not. But we got a lot of attention for it. People started asking her who was doing her social media, and she started referring me just like on a one-on-one basis. So that's really how I found this industry. And she also is still a client of ours. She is still a big advocate for the work that we do. And in 2023, she was the person who really convinced me that leaning into this industry would be a good move for me to completely niche down in.
I love that. I love the transparency that you've created there. I also love that you're working with a woman in the home service industry because I don't feel like that's also common. And I love that you kind of took that leap into doing something that was not common. Maybe businesses are on there now. Absolutely. TikTok is the platform to be on, but you chose to like lean into something that wasn't the norm, so to speak. And so I know I kind of dived us right in because I'm so excited about this, but I want to take a step back and then we can dive a little bit more into some of those things here. So thank you for sharing. But what got you into, first of all, social media? I know it started as a side hustle and now you're finding that success. And prior to that, as I followed your content, I know you were a waitress of sorts. And so like, can you dive into more of that like couch to riches story? Like, tell me more about who you are. Tell our audience who you are.
That's funny. So I did work in restaurants for 17 years. It was my job all through high school, college, having kids. I went to school for first for graphic design and then interior design. So I got to take a lot of art classes, which I've always loved. I feel like social media ended up being like a great culmination of who I am because I was also in yearbook and photography. I've always been someone who just like documents life. I take a ton of pictures. And so social media was like the obvious direction, although I didn't know it at the time. When I was a restaurant manager for 5 years, and that's around the time I was having my children, and I found that the hours were just really difficult. And I was always in a situation where I was being told I like wasn't quite good enough to be what I wanted to be. So like when I wanted to be a restaurant manager, I had an area director at the time that was like, well, why don't you prove it to me? Basically, like I had to do this contest, and I killed it. I ended up leading our restaurant to being number one in the area and then got to be promoted. But like no one else had to go through that. And then I wanted to be a GM and I felt like I was ready. And I was even put in a position that I was the acting GM for our restaurant. And then it was just like, well, you don't quite have the experience. And someone else was moved in and I ended up having to train them on all the technical parts of the job. And so I just like kept being in the situations where I felt like I was being not only like underestimated, but also like I was not fully in control of what success was possible for me. And so I didn't want that. I was like constantly looking for a way to have unlimited success without somebody or something putting some sort of limit on it or having to be like leaning on someone else and their results that were impacting what I was doing. So, like so many people, you're like trying to find this $1 million idea. Like, what could I do that could bring me money and allow me to keep financial success, financial freedom of time and autonomy. I didn't want to manage restaurants anymore. My son was like a year old and I ended up having a friend who owned 2 bars locally. And he was like, well, I'll pay you to come in and do the marketing for the bars. And so I was like, okay. So I kind of like didn't have there wasn't a lot of like, this is what you need to do. It was just like, try to bring people in, plan some parties, like post about it on social. And I ended up doing a couple of things. One of them is we had this big, they were already like a place to have football watch parties. And we ended up, after like posting about it a ton, when I looked at like year over year of the Facebook event that we created, it ended up being like the biggest watch party that they had. They had on a Thursday night, the same sales that they typically have Friday through Sunday. And the Facebook event was just like massively different. And I think it was like, had been, there were like 1,000 people who had responded. Like it was just like massive compared to the year before where it was like 24 people had responded. So I was like, dang, like we did that completely organically. Like there were no ads. Like that's cool. Like this is possible. And so I also got really into Instagram stories, which this was like 2017. So it was kind of good timing for that. And I just realized that people needed social media and it was a lot for a business owner to try to figure out and execute on. So I was like, I'm just going to offer this to people. So I went to a couple of business owners I knew and they all told me yes, which maybe was like my prices were too low. They were really low when I started. But that was how I got my first 3 clients, was just asking people if I could work for them.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool because you leaned on your network, you leaned on your community, you leaned on
Yeah.
skills that you had, and you helped promote others to rise. It's like that phrase, when the tides rise, all the boats rise, right? I feel like you were kind of gaining that experience and going from there. And so you touched on it a little bit, but as you navigated this early journey of entrepreneurship, what did you define as success? So thank you for sharing your story. And I think that when we look at the quote overnight success, like it's taken years, right? And so did you kind of have this guiding light of where you were trying to go, and like what was success for you? You knew you wanted to get out of the restaurant industry, navigating those next steps. Yeah, so I'd be curious what you think about that.
I feel like people listening to this can probably relate to this, but like the goalpost always moves. And so it's more, and that's hard. You have to remember to celebrate all of the milestones. I think so. I think what success looked like changed, when I had a side hustle, like success was enough clients to quit my other job. And I honestly, the only reason I quit my other job is because of COVID. So it was such a like blessing for our family in that way that it forced me out. It forced me out of my comfort zone of the quick money I was making waiting tables and bartending. And then success through that was like our family still having enough money to pay our bills when I was down half of my income and my husband was working so hard. I mean, since then, we've been able to, I now have 17, 18 people working for me, almost most of them full time. And so success is being able to pay them and my family. My husband no longer works. So success is keeping him home so that our kids are always picked up as soon as school's over and are able to come home to our house with their parents. Success is paying my tax bills. It's our client successes. It's having freedom of time to and the money to travel when we want to. Like it constantly changes, and so I think that it's really. It would be hard to put like what is success because it's always evolving.
Yeah, that's such a cool journey too. And when I think about where you've been, it hasn't even been 10 years, right? Just to verify.
No.
Yeah, so less than 10 years, and you started as a side hustle and now you have a full team. How did you have to evolve in becoming that leader to have a full team like that? Because I think that a lot of people go through this grind and don't recognize how much you evolve in this process as well. So how did you move through that? I know you mentioned moving out of your comfort zone at one point, but how does that look? If you don't mind sharing maybe a story about that.
Yeah. So if I get off track in this, let me know because there's a couple of things I want to say. So I'm sure everyone has heard this, but like entrepreneurship is a huge mind game. It's just like you have to be on this journey of self-growth because it does test you. For leadership, I definitely learned a lot as a manager in restaurants. I was lucky to work for a big company that had invested a lot in their culture at some point. And so there was a lot of leadership training. It wasn't exactly like followed throughout the company, but I found a lot of it really useful and it has definitely translated. One thing that I haven't mentioned yet is around the same time that I started this side hustle, I fell into a CrossFit gym, and I say I was never athletic, and if I really look at my history, it's something I've always been I wanted to do, but I was never strong. I wasn't like born with athletic ability. But I was involved. But anyways, I had been asked to do CrossFit from other people and thought it was insane. And I ended up just like randomly getting this opportunity. I fell into a CrossFit gym. I was looking for donations for something I was doing. And right after that, I was getting targeted by their Facebook ads, which funny enough, at the time, I didn't realize I was being targeted. Like, I don't know how I didn't realize that, but I was like, oh my gosh, it's a sign. Like, I need to join this. And so I did. And I ended up doing this 6-week challenge. And what was so cool is it was like the first time in my adult life that I had really tried to do something new and succeeded at it. I guess I did that in the restaurant too, but it just felt so different. And so I still do CrossFit and I love it because almost every day I'm pushed out of my comfort zone and it translates into business so much. And there's so many times that I'm like in the middle of workouts and thinking like, I I wouldn't stop if this was about business right now, so I can't stop now. Like, is this whatever I allow myself to do here is going to allow, I'm going to do it in real life too. So I have that conversation with myself often when I'm like in a situation that's uncomfortable at the gym.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought this in. I was so excited to talk about, because obviously we have a form we ask you to fill out, and you mentioned the gym, and following your journey, I've seen your content about being in the gym. And I think for me, the gym is such a place that I can prove to myself physically that I can do hard things. When you're
Right.
behind the screen, when you're working with clients, that's mental. And as an entrepreneur, as a founder, that's emotional even, right? But I think I think the translation of like doing the hard thing and not quitting when it gets hard is so powerful. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, but now you can do pull-ups, right? Like this is so cool to me that like you're at
No,
this stage.
it's so
Oh,
funny.
almost.
No, I'm not there yet, but it's funny because I've been posting about my journey and so many people have asked me about it, which I think is cool. I've actually only posted about it twice, but at a recent conference I was at, I was asked about it probably 4 or 5 times. And I think it's just a testament to like how, number one, like people are paying attention to what you post about. And number two, why it's so important to like post about things other than what you do for work. Like people they like to be on that journey. So I was actually just editing the third video about that, but I don't have it yet. It's still in progress, but that is one of my things that I'm working on right now.
Well, that's cool. It's proving that you can do those hard things. And you actually just pulled on another thing I wanted to talk about, which I love the relatability behind the gym. But also you mentioned conferences. And so let's dive back into kind of networking and being visible. I think that one thing that I've noticed also from your content is that you're consistently putting yourself in a space where your ideal customers might be hanging out, right? And I think that one thing we talked about a little bit before we got on the recording was niching down. So could you elaborate a little bit on how you started with your first 3 clients and that social media? Maybe they weren't your ideal clients, but now that you've scaled, you're really finding your ideal clients. Maybe that's through social media or conferences or word of mouth. But let's hear more about that story if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah. Okay. So originally I did think that my ideal customer would be bars and restaurants because that was what my background was. That was how I started in social. And that was what I went after. There were a couple of things that made me pivot from that. One of them was during COVID, bars and restaurants had no sales for the most part. And so they didn't have money to spend on social. What was interesting is that their social media was actually the easiest way for them to reach their customers. So it ended up being like super impactful for them. It just, without sales, like you don't have money to pay for marketing. So, and it didn't work as well in my business model as far as like I didn't want to have to spend all of my time in a place getting pictures and videos as content. Like that wasn't like going to be scalable for me at all. So, when I started just kind of like taking on these plumbing and HVAC businesses just kind of like randomly. I'm still trying to look for who we were going to work with. And like I said, in 2023, I had a conversation with my first client and she was like, Jen, like nobody is focused on social media in this industry. You know, I want to say something first. I used to listen to the podcast, How I Built This a lot. Like I don't listen to a lot of podcasts right now because I don't drive anywhere. So I don't have a lot of time to listen to podcasts. But I used to listen to that podcast a lot and I loved it because it's some of the biggest, most successful entrepreneurs that exist in this world that are on it telling how they got started. And they all started so like modestly, like living in an apartment. They had no money. They had nothing. They were just doing this thing and they were doing it and doing it and doing it. And one day it worked, right? But another thing, and I remember specifically Mark Cuban saying this, that it's luck. And I always hated that. I'm like, it's not freaking luck. Like it's work. But I also can say like, I'm so lucky. And I don't know if it's, the work got me to the luck, like when you do the work, the opportunities open. And I do believe that. I believe that the luck could be there for anyone. Like, I don't think anybody is like inherently unlucky and it's not possible for you, but I think you have to be aware, right? And so the money wasn't there in the bars and restaurant industry, even though that was something I knew and I loved and I wanted to be a part of. They did not have the money to pay me. So how am I going to have a successful business with a bunch of business owners that can't pay me what I know I need in order to make this business successful? The plumbing and HVAC industry does have that money. They have that profit margin. They have the money to invest in it. They want to invest in it. They're already investing a lot of money into their marketing. And there was nobody who was focused on social media, especially for them. And so there was like when I say luck, it's like I found this industry that needed what I had to offer. I already had somewhat of an in it. I knew where I needed to go. And so when I made that decision, that was March of 2023. If you look at my P&L between 2022 and 2023, it, I think, increased by about 600%. And so and it was just because I knew where to go. As soon as it was like, okay, this is who I'm going to talk to. Like, all right, well, I reached out to somebody who I knew because I had already made connections in this industry. I had just never like solely focused on them. So I reached out to someone I knew who worked for Service Titan, who is like their biggest CRM that they all use, especially like the customers or the clients that I work with. And she invited me to come and speak at 2 of their smaller events, their Marketing Pro events. That was massive. That was huge. Like, so now I'm able to like go to their place and align myself with all these other marketers who are already working with this industry. And then from there, and I'll say this too, I am number one, like I will always ask for help. I ask for help at every single level that I'm at. When I was starting this social media company, I didn't know how to do social media for someone else. Like, I had studied it, but I had never done it. And so I found a bunch of people who were doing social media for clients, either at like a business level or a freelance level. And I asked them, like, what are the analytics that you're sending your clients? Like, how are you doing? Am I doing this right? Like, here's what I'm doing. Does this work? And that's how actually through that was a networking group that it was like a mastermind group that I had joined, that isn't around anymore. But the connection I made in there is who introduced me to this plumber. And so when I think back about like how this all started, it started from that connection. Christina Olivares is somebody who, one of the accounts I was managing on my very first, like these bars, it was following her. So I kept seeing her stories, and she was the one talking about this group that she didn't even end up being a part of by the time I had joined. But it's like, you have to look for the opportunity and put yourself in these situations and not be afraid to ask for help. So when I asked if I could speak at this event, what gave me the audacity to think that I was at the place where I should be speaking at this event. But like, what's the worst that can happen? As they could say no. And from that event, they were like, oh, we're giving away 2 tickets to our big event that we do. It's actually the event I just came back from, but this was like 2 years ago, and I didn't have the money to go to this event, like at all. But I applied for this contest that they had, and I got the free tickets. And so then I'm like, well, I'm going to have to get myself there. And so we spent money we didn't have to go there. But I knew that there had to be something in this, and it had to be important. That was actually the event that I met Gary Vee, which was also incredible, and completely in a situation where he was speaking at this really private event that I didn't have tickets to, but I just went and told him, like, please let me go. Like, I'll be whoever I need to be. I'll do whatever I need to do. Just get me into this room. And I was in there. And so, like, you have to just, like, not be so in your head or so afraid sometimes and just, like, try it. Like, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So, like, you have to just put yourself in there.
I love that, Jen. Thank you so much for sharing, because you're talking about resilience and grit and showing up outside your comfort zone and kind of doing those hard things and not allowing your imposter syndrome, so to speak, like hold you back, right? And I think that especially being a woman, we're already playing in a world that is mostly filled with men, maybe not social media, maybe social media, but business in general, right? And so I think it's really cool that you have asked for help and you've been transparent about your growth and where you're going and what you can offer. And even the transparency behind bringing in your first woman in the trade and saying, let's go to TikTok. I don't know if it's the right platform. I don't know if it's going to work. Let's figure it out together. And look at where it's gotten you. And also, you mentioned Christina. Christina was on season 1 of the podcast. She's with the Social Butterfly Gal and is incredible as well. And I love having these conversations with women, and you two women in particular. I do believe you're on some variation of the EOS model, right? And so I love talking about systems. And so could you talk a little bit about how having some systems or structure has allowed you to, I imagine, I'm not trying to assume here, but I imagine has been some sort of catalyst and building blocks to get you to this stage, right?
Yeah. So I kind of want to start a little bit back from that. When right around like after COVID, I read a book called You Are a Badass at Making Money. And in that book, she talks about hiring a business coach. Like, this is what I gathered out of this book, okay? That she didn't have the money to hire this business coach, but she did anyways. And I am somebody who will consistently do something that is probably like 5 or 10 minutes before most people would feel comfortable doing it. And that's, I think I've shown that a couple times in the story that I've been telling. But so from this book, I was like, okay, I need to hire a business coach. And so I did. And this business coach cost me $2,000 a month. I did not have $2,000 a month to pay this person. I likely was making $4,000 a month in my business, and I didn't have another job. So my husband was the only person bringing in money. I didn't tell my husband how much this business coach cost. I told him I was going to hire them. This was obviously a problem pretty quickly, but what I ended up doing is I had made a commitment to myself that I was going to make $10,000 months. I was going to get to $10,000 months. As a freelancer, that's a goal that a lot of freelancers have. And I said I was going to do it in 6 months. So I hired this business coach. I ended up doing it in 8 months, getting to $10,000. But one of the things that she taught me is that I needed to hire somebody quickly because I needed to get in the habit of delegating tasks. And this wasn't like pretty quickly after working with her, I hired my first person and I paid them $20 an hour for 5 hours a week. So $100 a week, about $400 a month. And it was a good first lesson into like what to delegate and how to delegate. And I'm sure many people have heard about like the 4 quadrants of like what you love and what you're good at, all the way to like what you hate and what you're not good at. And you want to delegate those first things. Or another way to think about it is like value tasks. So you've got, $10 task, $100 task, $1,000 task, and $10,000 task. And so you want to delegate the $10 task first. So those were the first things that I did. So I built the company, and I've had a couple of different mentors and business coaches since then. I always have somebody that I'm paying to help me with my business, always. But so I hired people, and what I had built was basically me as like the main point of contact and account manager for all of our clients, and then fulfillment being done. And that wasn't scalable. I was like at a point where I reiterated that at one point where I did have account managers, but I was still so bottlenecked into like how we could scale. We couldn't go any further. And so I kept trying to figure out what I was going to do to restructure the company. And so that's how I was introduced to EOS. That's where I'm going with all this is, a couple different agency owners, because again, I always ask for help. So I call 3 or 4 people and ask them like, hey, like, how did you get to where you're at? Like you have more clients than I do and more revenue than I do. Like, what does your structure of your team look like? And like 3 of the 4 people I talked to said they were running on EOS. And EOS, to hire an implementer, is not it's an investment. It's a massive investment. It's an investment even, again, like when I talk about I invest in things sooner than most people would. When we invested in EOS, it was likely sooner than most people would be comfortable investing in it. from like a percentage of revenue standpoint. But what it did is it quickly restructured how we do things, and it brought other people to my level to put like the thinking and the growth and the projects on their brains as well. And it held everybody accountable on the team. So in EOS, we set our accountability chart, which just says like what people are responsible for throughout the company. So we have somebody who's responsible for fulfillment. And so everything that we do as far as like content and videos and ads, it all falls under her department. We have somebody in charge of client experience. So everything under the account managers that fall under her department. And then we have sales and marketing and financial and HR. But it's not like it's a constant evolving thing as our agency evolves. Nobody's job is just ahead of anything. Everybody's still account managers and has other roles just because of where we're at. But that was like one of the biggest things. And then we follow our level 10 meetings. We just had our quarterly planning session. So we set 90-day rocks and then work towards making them happen, which has been also, we've been able to move so fast. Like my word of the year this year was elevate. And like, it's like crazy. This year has just been incredible.
Kate, do you mind diving a little bit more on the incredibleness of the word elevate? I think there's a lot of power in that. Before you hop into that, is I love that you adopted and you're willing to invest in things up front where you see that there's a lot of power and potential in that, because I think a lot of times founders get stuck in paralysis analysis, and I haven't heard that from you at all. I love that you're just going. You're like, I got to get this done. I'm moving forward. I'm figuring it out as we go. It's almost like you see the vision and you're clearly communicating that with your team now through an EOS model. And with that, you've got full buy-in because everybody understands where they fit in your boat, so to speak, right? But I think there's a lot of power behind intentionality. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about how Elevate has taken you from where you are, and maybe this even kind of trickles in from like the expansion that you saw. I'd be curious your word of last year, if you had one too.
Yeah, my word of last year, I believe, was expansion. And so we started EOS in November of last year. So we really we were almost completely on track for like all the quarters. I think there was one where we kind of like went a little bit out, but like when I think about Elevate, like our team is so incredibly different than it was last year because of the way that we've restructured it. And there is a lot, I'm sure like some people listening to this are like, oh my God, I can never work for that person. Cause I do move really fast. Like I want to build the parachute as I'm jumping out of the plane. I am willing to sell things before they exist. And luckily, I have people on my leadership team that are the opposite of me, because we're getting to a good point now where they're like, okay, Jen, like that, no, like we're not gonna sell that before right now. Like that isn't something that makes sense. And I do think that, I think that I know that we're like capable of great things. So what we did, bless you, what we did this year is we totally restructured like our content team, and we have somebody who's oversees them, and has just, it's been like the difference in how we create and what we do is just like a machine, which is so cool. Our last rock was like restructuring our ads team. And so our ads team is running so smooth right now. We're currently bringing our video editing team internally, which we've had a contracting vendor doing it this whole time, so that we have more say over our strategy and our execution. But even like things like going to the events and how different those look this year versus last year is just due to our team. I hired a virtual assistant through a company called Unique Genius around the same time last year, like November. I think I did it all in the same. That's what I'm talking about. Like I'm kind of crazy sometimes. I'm like, I need all of this, and so I will do this now. So I did hire an assistant. I just made a post about it yesterday because I think that it can feel like even sometimes I feel bougie, like, oh, I'll have Margot reach out to you, but that is so that things get done. Like Margot makes sure that things get done. Margot, she manages my inbox and my calendar along with like a myriad of other things. She does so much. Like she sends all of our birthday and anniversary gifts to all of our team members and our clients, and they all freaking love it, which was one of the first and biggest projects I wanted her to take on when she took on. Like when she came on, I was like, I want to make sure we send birthday and anniversary gifts to all of our clients and our team. And she does. And it's like, it's about 150 gifts that we're sending. So at least every other day, sometimes like 3 times a day, I'm getting DoorDash things. But she also makes sure that I have meetings with people, that things get followed up on, that all of these events, like if I'm speaking at them, if they need things from me, like they have everything that they need with deadlines. So that has also just been like such a difference. And so it takes getting used to and learning. Like if you've never had an assistant, it's really hard to know what to tell them to do. You probably don't have systems for it. You've never had to work that out. But so all of those things have just elevated immensely. I mean, even like our EOS, from our very first EOS meeting until our quarterly yesterday, I mean, that's all I could say. And transparently, we hit 47% of our rocks, which the previous 2 quarters we had hit 100% of our rocks. So this was a big change, and we learned a lot from these. And when our team was asked, when our leadership team was asked to rate our quarter, they gave them a B. And I was like, okay, guys, but also like, I think this is an A quarter. Like we learned so much from this. And I don't want us to like dwell on not having hit some of these goals that we set, because we're really close. And one of them we decided to kill anyways, but it's just, and not like, maybe if there were 3 quarters in a row where we hit 50%, that would be a problem. That would be a pattern. But like, I think where we're at right now is just, it's crazy what we've accomplished.
It's so exciting. It's really exciting. I can see the energy. I can feel the energy of you and the momentum behind what you're building. And I love your story, and I appreciate you coming on to share this. And so I have 2 final questions for you. One of those being is there anything that you feel like we missed, or a question that I should have asked that I didn't, that you'd like to dive into now?
I think the only thing that I did think about a couple times while we were talking is like looking at your marketing ecosystem whenever you're building your business. So I think that's, of course, like the niching down was really beneficial. But when I look at how we bring leads in and how we continue to grow, it's because there's so much intention in our marketing ecosystem. So it's like not just one thing. It's not just posting on social media. It's not just going to these conferences. It's not just running ads. It's not strategic partnerships. It's all of these things that we do consistently. Like on our EOS scorecard, I'm required to post 6 times a day on my personal page. We also have our podcast, which is our top of funnel strategy that we post on 5 days a week. And we have our Key Heart marketing pages that we post on 5 days a week. And we work in these events not only to be around our customers, but to create strategic partnerships for referral partners. And we have a lot of referral partners that refer us customers. We do run ads that not only grow our email list that we send emails to twice a week and launch all of our digital products to, but we run ads to our email list as well whenever for bookings and for launches. We launch digital products. We have webinars. We partner with other people who serve our customers for webinars. And then we also build relationships with people in person and carry them out into social media so that we're communicating with them on a daily basis. So our marketing ecosystem is something that has been built out over the last 6 years, but like we intentionally market every day, and we build out our quarterly marketing plan, which includes all of those things that we're constantly working on. So I think that's another really important concept to consider of how we were able and how we're able to continue to scale.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I'll say at the optimization specialist, our word this year was visibility. And what I just heard from you is that you're being very visible across all of your platforms, and which also leads into elevate, right? Which I love. And I think that it's just a testament in 2025 that social media is that digital business card. And in order to be seen by your ideal clients, you need to hire somebody like Jen and her team to help build that. And I know I've had founders talk to me and ask, where do you know of social media experts? And I'm like, I know of one. She has great content, but I think she's honed in on the trades. And so I send them your way. I don't know if they convert or not, but in addition to that, my other question, you've touched on some key resources. And before we wrap up here, I would love to hear, do you have either a book recommendation or maybe a YouTube channel that is just the kind of the go-to place where Jen is absorbing content and elevating, and that you would like to share with our audience?
Like something that I'm consuming.
Yep, like a favorite influencer, maybe you consume them on social media, or you're listening to or reading a book or something like that that's just been really powerful for you in the last couple of months.
Well, I study a lot of the law of attraction work, so I read a lot of the Abraham Hicks books, and I actually listen to their YouTube videos on a daily basis. It's always just a great reminder of how important it is to feel good and focus on the good things in my life that I can attract more of them. So that's probably my biggest consistent influence. I do also, I just finished Shoe Dog, which is a great book for entrepreneurs, but I even recommended it to my dad. I really loved that one. That's the Nike story that Philip Knight wrote. I feel like I'm constantly buying books that people recommend. Like I said, I don't have a lot of time to listen to podcasts and stuff, so that isn't typically something that I consume. And then whenever I'm on social media for pleasure, I'm trying not to be businessy with it because I'm on it all day for work and a business standpoint.
That definitely makes sense. Well, Jen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you? And do you have any free resources where they can download? And we'll add these into the show notes as well, but would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so on our Instagram, which is Keehart Marketing, KEEHART Marketing, in our bio link, there's links to our different resources that we have in there and any like upcoming webinars or things that we have going on. You can connect with me personally on Facebook as Jen McKee, and also on LinkedIn, although Facebook is where I'm the most active. We also have a TikTok for Keehart Marketing and a YouTube channel. And then we have a podcast as well, the Key to Growth podcast, where I bring on marketing experts from the trades, but a lot of the information is applicable to local businesses or small businesses. It's a great resource if you're ever stuck in marketing of like, what could I do to make my marketing better today? And so that's the Key to Growth. We're on all the podcast platforms, including YouTube, and Key is KEE, Key to Growth.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I know you provide exceptional services. And so if you're in the trades, go find Jen and her team. They are there to be helpful. I appreciate your time. And also, I'll say, if you liked this episode, make sure you like and subscribe and or share it with your friends and family. We couldn't do this without the support of our network. So thank you so much, Jen. Until next time.
Thank you.